Hey, my name's Liz and I sell on Poshmark, eBay, and Mercari. Most of my videos are hauls, but today I'm going to talk about my top 60 sales over $60 for the first half of 2025, so January through June. These sales are across the board as for brands and some are from other platforms besides Poshmark, which is my main platform. You'll see pieces that I bought at the bins, all the way through pieces that I paid up for. We'll kind of see how that impacts my earnings because some of them sold for higher price points, but the pieces at the bins ended up bringing in better returns since we're paying so much less for those. So I'm gonna start at the bottom and work our way up to the highest sales. But the first one is a LoveShackFancy dress. It was called the Bennett dress. It sold for $60. That sold over on eBay, and that sold in April and was listed for just about a month, so a pretty quick sale. I am not a fast flipper, although it's awesome when you do get those fast sales, but I have some pieces in here that were listed for a pretty long time, so you'll see that as we go. I bought this at the bins, which was a crazy fun bin find to find LoveShackFancy there. So I only paid about $2 for it, making my earnings after eBay fees $50.64 and just $2 for that cost of goods. So $48.64 was my net earnings there. Next we have a Anthropologie dress. It was called the Carlotta dress, and it was kind of a mixed print, colorful boho midi dress. I actually found this at a Goodwill in Florida when I was on vacation. So this sold for $61. I paid $16 for it, making my earnings after Poshmark fees $48.60 and my net earnings $32.80. And this was only listed for 7 days before it sold. Next we have one of my favorite brands to come across, and that is Tuckernuck. Definitely be sure to be familiar with that one if you aren't. This one was from the brand Pomander Place from Tuckernuck, and that's probably one of the brands I come across most often that's sold on that website. This was a cocoa red tweed bow dress, and I've sold this style a couple times. It's a pretty popular one from them. This one sold in 96 days for $62 on Poshmark. I paid $13 for it from my local thrift store, and my earnings on Poshmark were $49.60, and after everything, my net earnings were $36.60. Next we have another LoveShackFancy piece, and I think there's one more on here as well. This was the Becca skirt, and it was like a white and blue floral print. I also found this piece at the bins, so my cost of goods was only $1.50 on this one. The order price was $63, so my earnings on Poshmark after fees were $47.12, and my net earnings were $45.62. And this actually took 132 days to sell, which kind of surprised me because I had it at a decent price since I found it at the bins. I knew that my return was going to be good, and I didn't mind it going for a slightly lower price point. But it was listed in January, so maybe that had some impact that no one was looking for that kind of style for a few months. Next we have one of the few men's pieces on this list. I will sell men's, kids, women's, anything, but I definitely gravitate towards women's clothes more. So this was a J. Crew top coat. It was called the Ludlow style, and it was like a nice men's dress coat. I picked this up at the bins, but since it's a little heavier, it costs probably about $5 in weight for that piece. It sold for $65 on Poshmark. The earnings after fees was $52, and my net earnings were $47. And this was listed for 263 days. So that is definitely on the longer side of pieces that are on this list. But I listed it last spring and it sold over this winter. So not totally shocking that it didn't sell in the summer. I would have thought maybe it would sell in the fall, but that's okay with me. I do list pieces out of season. I definitely have a kind of put it away and forget it mindset if I don't list it right away. So I do try to list things as they come in, and then if they don't sell, I will relist them. I hadn't done that with this piece though. Okay, next up is a Lily Pulitzer piece, and that is one of my favorite brands personally, so I definitely gravitate towards picking it up when I do see it out at the thrift stores. I have been known to pay more than I probably should for pieces from them because it makes me happy to list them. So that's kind of the case with this one. This was the Moana maxi dress style, and it was new with tags, but I paid $35 for this from an Uptown Cheapskate in Florida. So it only sold for $65. My earnings on Poshmark were $52, so I only made $17 from it after all the fees and what I paid for it. But it sold in 9 days, so at least it was a really quick sale, and I made that money back quickly. And I find those pieces enjoyable to list, so I know that they're never gonna sit in my death pile. Next, we have another eBay sale, and this was a Free People Movement piece. It was this really big, fluffy, oversized vest. I actually picked this up at Plato's Closet, and I was hoping to keep it for myself, but I didn't like it as much as I was hoping, so I ended up selling it. I paid up for this piece quite a lot, so very low earnings, but I paid $45 for it, which is fine for me if I'm paying for myself. But since I obviously ended up selling it, it sold for $65 on eBay, making my earnings after fees $59.25. But I only had $14.25 in net earnings. It sold in about a month, so not too bad, but I definitely wouldn't pick that piece up at that price point with the intention of selling it. If I had worn it a handful of times and then sold it, that wouldn't have felt so bad, but at least I, still made some money back on it, and that's one of the benefits of reselling is when you don't like something from your own closet, you can just resell it. Next up is I think my only piece from Depop that sold on this list, and this is a pair of Ferragamo heels, and these were a Y2K style kitten heel with an open toe with a little bow. They were faux suede, or no, they were actually probably real suede from Ferragamo. Definitely an older style, and that's one of the benefits of Depop is the pieces that get so little interest for being these random older styles on other platforms do so well on Depop. That's really the only reason I keep the platform. I don't make a ton of sales there, but every once in a while something goes crazy. These had like 70 something likes, and they didn't have a single like on any other platform. So they sold in 2 days for $65. My cost of goods was $4 on these, which is great for a designer pair of shoes. My store probably didn't price them up because they were pretty outdated, but that's trendy sometimes. So my earnings were $61.80 after Depop fees. I don't do free shipping over there. The buyer pays for their shipping. So my net earnings were $57.80, and I bought this at my local thrift store. I was pretty excited about that and couldn't believe how popular they were over there. Next up is an Anthropologie dress from one of my most recent hauls. This was called the Blythe style, and I found 4 new with tags plus size Anthropologie dresses this day, and they all did really well. This one I paid $18 for. It sold for $65. My earnings on Poshmark were $52 after fees, and I made $34 from net earnings, and this sold in just 7 days. That is like an ideal sale for me. Next up, we'll see a couple more of these on this list. But one day my mom and I were out in Pennsylvania, and we went to a thrift store that had tons, I mean hundreds of new quince bedding and linens. I regret not buying more, but I had no idea how they were gonna do. So I bought 3. All 3 sold for great prices and very quickly. This one was the airy gauze duvet set, and this one was in like a terracotta orange, and it had 2 pillow shams with it, which was great because not all of them did. I paid $13 each for these bedding sets, and this one sold for $67 on Poshmark. My net earnings were $50.62 after fees, my earnings were $50.62 after fees. My net earnings were $37.62, and this sold in 6 days, which I was pretty pleased with. Obviously that's great how quick it sold, but this one being orange, I thought that it would maybe be the slowest of the 3 to sell, but I was wrong. Next is the third and I think last piece of LoveShackFancy on this list. This was the Ruffle Heritage mini skirt in antique white, really cute, but kind of a basic piece from them. It didn't have any prints or tons of details. It was just like a little tiered skirt. This one I actually found at an estate sale, which was one of my craziest hauls that I've ever had. I found just dozens of pieces of great brands, designer clothing there. I actually went to this estate sale in October, so this piece did take 98 days to sell. It sold in January, but the majority of the pieces from that sale have sold already, so there's not too many in this list. I had a lot that sold last quarter, or the last half of 2024, but I paid $11 for this piece. It sold for $67, so my earnings were $50.62, and my net earnings were $39.62. Super happy with that. I would love to be able to find more estate sales like that, but they're kind of uncommon. There's tons of estate sales in my area, but I don't find great clothes at them most of the time. Next up, we have a jacket from Marine Layer. I think it was called the Trucker style, and it was like a flannel lined jacket. I found this at the Bins, which was awesome to find. I love selling this brand. So I paid about $3 for it, and it sold for $67. Again, it was $50.62 after those Poshmark fees, and my net earnings were $47.62. And this sold in just 2 days. It sold in February, so glad that it sold in the winter and I didn't have to carry it until next winter. I would prefer not to have bulky jackets taking up my storage space over the summer. Next up is a dress brand that I have come across a few times, and that is Meshki. And this one was a purple full-length dress. It was called the Jacqueline style, really pretty satin. This one sold for $67 again, and I paid just $10 for this at my local thrift store. Once again, my earnings were $50.32 and my net earnings were $40.32. This sold in just 11 days in May, so great quick sale. This is a brand that I didn't think I would ever really come across, and I was kind of surprised to come across it in denim, but that is Dairy Boy, and it is a very popular brand for particularly like sweat sets. So I was kind of surprised to see jeans. I didn't even know that they made jeans, but these were a straight leg pair that I found at Plato's, and they were $18, sold for $67. My earnings were $50.32 again, and my net earnings were $32.32. And these sold in less than 1 day. I would definitely pick them up again if I found them, and I would definitely try anything I came across from this brand, but it's a pretty new brand and very trendy, so I don't expect to really come across it in the thrift stores, but maybe at a place like Plato's or other kind of more buy, sell, trade, or consignment stores, you may come across it, but be on the lookout for that one. Next up, we have a piece from Anthropologie. The brand for this one was Corey Lynn Coulter, and it was new with tags, a really cute romper with like a fruit print on it that I got at the Anthropologie outlet, which you will see quite a few pieces coming up from there as well. This one I got at not the most recent time that I went, but the time before that. And this one took 146 days to sell, which I was kind of surprised by because it was one of my favorite pieces from that haul. But I guess people were not looking for it until June, and since it was listed in January, I actually did relist this piece, and it sold in about 2 weeks from relisting it, which makes me realize I really need to do that more often than I do. But this sold for $67. That earnings again $50.32, but I did pay $35 for this piece, so my net earnings were only $15.32, which is not great, and I thought that this one would sell for closer to like $90 because it had a very high retail price and it got a ton of likes, but I guess people just weren't looking for it at that higher price point. So lesson learned, but still made some money off it, and it was definitely a popular style in my closet. Next is the brand Rami Brook, which I come across often and leave a lot of it behind now because the style is just outdated, what I'm coming across, and this one was one of the cuter pieces that I have found from them in a pretty long time. This was the Harlow dress, and it was like a white lacy eyelet style dress. It had a lot of LoveShackFancy vibes to it, so I'm not surprised that this one did pretty well. It sold for $67 again. I don't know why that was such a popular price point in my closet. Is that 25% off $80? My Poshmark VA sends out 25% off offers, so when you see a bunch of prices for that same price point, it must be just whatever price I often list at, and then that's the offers that it's sending out. So once again, $50.32. This is the last $67 price point. So my net earnings were $35.28 because I paid $15 for this, and it sold in 27 days, which I thought was pretty good for this brand. This piece I actually lost money on because it was from my own closet. There's a couple different ways that people do the accounting for items that they are taking from personal use. You could either just zero it out and say that there was no cost of goods, all profit. If you know what you paid for it, you can say the cost of goods, which I try to do because then it's better for tax purposes, because I certainly didn't make all the profit on this piece. So that's what I did here. That's what I usually do. Do it whichever way you prefer. But this was a Johnny Was hoodie. I wore it quite a few times, so I definitely am fine with having made whatever money I could back from it. But this sold for $68. I originally paid about $80 for it, so obviously lost money there. But my net earnings from Poshmark were $54.40, and so I lost about $25 on it. But love that about reselling, that when I am done with a piece, I can get something back for it. And this only took about 4 days to sell, so that was cool. Next, we have another one of the Quince bedding sets from the store where I bought quite a few. This one was a king duvet in like a stripe. It was white and beige, I believe, really pretty neutral style. This one sold for $70, and once again I paid $13 for them. So my net earnings were $43, and this one took 13 days to sell. So again, nice and quick, which was great because they were pretty big and taking up a lot of space in my storage room. So we have a dress from the brand Hill House, and this was the Caroline nap dress in botanical blue. I will pretty much pick up anything from the brand Hill House. It has all done really well for me. This one I found at my local thrift store for $10, and it sold for $70 on Poshmark, making my earnings from Poshmark $56 and my net earnings $46. And this sold in just 12 days. The dresses especially are usually quick sellers for me from this brand. And I actually found this one in the pajama aisle, so be sure to check anywhere in the thrift store. You never know where you're gonna find something good. Some more Lily Pulitzer. This one is a bathing suit, and this was the flamenco one-piece bathing suit in the print It's All a Dream. Lily bathing suits usually do really well. They hold a lot of value because they are very expensive, new. So if you come across Lily bathing suits, definitely be sure to look them up. There's a couple styles that in particular are really popular. So I paid up a little bit for thrift store prices for this one. I paid $20. It sold for $70. So my net earnings were $36, and it sold same day, which has been a pattern I've seen with Lily swimsuits when I've sold the couple that I found at the thrift store or ones from my own collection. They typically sell very quickly. We've got another piece from my Anthropologie outlet haul. This was that last time I went, not the most recent. Same as the other romper. This one was also a romper by the brand Vanessa Mooney, which I had never heard of before, but I loved the style of this. It had like a Bridgerton, Victorian-esque style, and like almost looked like a dress, not a romper. It was called the Elizabeth romper, so maybe I was biased, but this one I paid $35 for, sold for $70. So my net earnings were $21, a little better than the last piece, but this one took 71 days to sell and was also really popular in my closet, and it was pretty popular across all the platforms, so kind of surprised that it took as long as it did, but maybe if I had listed it in spring, it would have sold quickly, but 71 days is fine with me. I have the third and final Quince bedding piece. This one was, again, that airy gauze duvet cover. This one was in gray, and it had the shams as well. This one was the only one that sold on eBay. So it sold for $70. I paid $13. My net earnings were $48.91. and this one took 94 days to sell, which was so surprising. I thought this would be the first one to sell, neutral gray tone, thought that was going to be the quickest, but that one actually took the longest, so you never know. And that buyer probably paid quite a bit of shipping on eBay as well, because they weighed, I think, like 8 pounds. Next up, another piece from that same Anthropologie outlet haul. This one was a New Tags Free People dress. It was called the There She Goes midi dress, and this one sold for $72. I paid $35 for it, making my net earnings $22.60. This one took 41 days to sell, not too bad for having listed it in winter and it definitely being a spring summer style, so I was fine with that. And I did not pick up as much Free People the latest time that I went to this outlet, because I find that stuff is more saturated on Poshmark than some of those higher end pieces that I'm paying a little bit more for there, but I think they get a better return. We've got, I think, the only pair of shoes on this list. I'm not a huge shoe seller. I don't find the best shoes in my area for how good of the clothes that I find. I really don't come across amazing shoes often. They also just aren't my favorite to list. I don't really enjoy cleaning them, and they take up a lot more space in my storage than a piece of clothing most of the time. So I know there's great money in them and I would pick up more if I found more. I just don't know why we don't have great shoes, or they're priced really high. And this is a pair of clogs from Anthropologie. The brand was Silent D. They, I think, were the Georgia style, and I paid $15 for these. They sold for $75 on Poshmark, so my net earnings were $45. Found these at my local thrift store, and they took 126 days to sell. Not shocking, because I listed them at the beginning of November and they sold at the beginning of March. So for a more spring style shoe, that is pretty good timing. Next up, we have a Lilly Pulitzer romper. This one was called the Jessie style. It's kind of a hidden romper, and it was in white. So Lilly solids aren't known to do as great as the prints. However, white does pretty well. It is popular for bridal things, graduations, just people who like to wear Lilly do wear white in the summer. Kind of fits the vibe. So I paid $25 for this, sold on Poshmark for $75, making my net earnings $35, and it took 185 days to sell, which is longer than I would like, but it is what it is. On the opposite end of the spectrum, this next piece sold within an hour of listing it, and it was a brand I have never heard of before, and that is BB Ferrari. And I think that is a line from the brand Bernie Dexter. I picked this up purely based on style. It was a pinup retro dress with a poodle print on it, and I have had great luck selling any pinup style clothes that I've come across. I don't come across them often, but every single one I have picked up has sold within a very short amount of time. So I found this at the bins, so picked it up for about $2. It sold for $75 on Poshmark, making my net earnings $58, which just an ideal sale. Great earnings, fast turnaround, fun style that I learned about a new brand, and I would definitely pick that up again if I saw it, and I would pick up more pinup styles when I come across them. This brand is on here once or twice more as well, and that is House of CB, which has done very well for me every time I've come across it. I've only ever found dresses from them, I believe, and they are usually like party dresses you could wear to cocktail events or weddings, or sometimes they are a little sexier and like more of a club bachelorette party type of style, which is what this one was. It was the Camilla black dress, and it was like a bandage style with mesh and all of that. I paid just $3 for this at a Red, White, and Blue in Florida. It was like a 75% off piece. I have no idea why, because this brand is very popular. So my net earnings were $53.72 because it sold for $75 on Poshmark, and that sold in 27 days. This brand usually sells pretty quickly for me. The other piece on here, not quite as fast, but typically it's a quick sale. This next piece is probably one of the top 3 that took the longest on this list to sell. This is a dress from Revolve. It was the brand NBD, and it's the vanity mini dress in white. It's a one-shoulder style, and it was actually worn by one of the cast members on Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. So I did mention that in the listing. If I find that it's worn by someone famous or on a TV show or something, I usually do mention it, because sometimes people are looking for that piece based on having seen it somewhere. So if you do come across that information, I usually try and say it. This one took 325 days to sell. It sold for $80 on Poshmark, but I paid up $20 for it. It was new with tags, but still probably paid a little too much for that piece. My earnings were $64, net earnings $44, so still a good profit, but a long sale for having bought it for $20. Okay, next we have a designer piece, and this is a Hermes silk tie. This was navy and yellow print. I found this at my local Goodwill for just $5. They had a lot of designer ties this day. I think this is the only one on this list from that day, but this sold for $80. I paid just $5 for it, making my net earnings $59. I do sell men's ties. I find them at the bins often. I have found Hermes, Gucci, Valentino, Ferragamo ties all at the bins. So make sure to take a peek at them. A lot of people don't look at them, and they cost next to nothing at the bin, so it's a great piece to pick up there. And this took just 22 days to sell. Next is actually another men's piece, and this is from the brand Todd Snyder, and it was a white seersucker like polo pullover style shirt. My thrift store had it in the women's section, but I think Todd Snyder only makes men's. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure. And it was an XXL, which is even better. I found this at Value Village, which I do not find too many great pieces there. My Value Village is very expensive, but this one was just $7. I sold it for $80 on eBay, making my net earnings $64, and it took just 6 days to sell. So I was really excited about that one. We've got some denim next. These were from the brand Mother, a great denim brand to pick up. They were the tripper ankle high-rise slight flare style in work hard, play hard was the wash color. It was kind of just a medium blue. I paid $20 for these at Plato's Closet. I do often find really great denim at my Plato's. They sold for $81, making my net earnings $44.80, and these took only 22 days to sell. Actually, also from that same Plato's, I don't think the same trip, was this base wristlet pouch trio set. It was new without tags. It still had like the stuffing inside and paper on the zipper. So this brand is a luggage travel bag brand. Very popular, very current influencer loving kind of brand. I paid $12 for this. It sold for $82 on Poshmark. I think I had it listed for $100, which was over retail. I often find that pieces from this brand can be listed at retail or around above near retail pricing. It is a kind of drop base brand, so things sell out very quickly. Colors and styles are coveted and popular. I love those kind of brands as a reseller because you never know what is going to be weirdly a very rare popular piece. So my net earnings on this were $50.32 and it sold in 1 month. Up next is a Tuckernuck sale, and it is actually the same exact dress as my last one that I mentioned from this brand, just in a different size, and sold for more. So this one sold for $85. I paid $11 from my local thrift, making my net earnings $57. This one took 48 days to sell. One was a large and one was an extra small. I don't remember which one was which, but I think the one that sold for more was the large. So bigger sizes is always better to find when possible. Doesn't mean I don't pick up small sizes, but you can usually get just a bit more for bigger sizes. They aren't listed as much and harder to find a lot of the time. This piece is actually from Tuckernuck as well, I believe, and the brand was Never a Wallflower, and it was a high neck blue kind of dress with metallic threading. I sold this one on eBay for $85. I paid $9 for it, making my net earnings $66.09. I got this at an Uptown Cheapskate in Florida, and it took 31 days to sell. Then we've got another piece from that pile of plus size Anthropologie dresses that I came across. This was the Katarina style, which is a very popular style from Anthropologie. They've made it in 50 prints. I've come across it a couple times. This one was like a dark green with black velvet flocked floral print. It was a really gorgeous piece. Sold in just 3 days for $86. I paid $12, so my net earnings were $53.52. I would pick this piece up over and over and over again. Another from that same Anthropologie outlet haul. This was a Reformation dress. It was like a halter midi dress, linen material, really nice style. Sold for $90. I paid $35 there for it, making my net earnings $37. Now that is more like the ratio that I would like to see when I'm buying things from a place like that. Pretty much doubling my money. That took 92 days to sell. Then this one was really fun. This is from Plato's. This is a Vera Bradley backpack, and it was a Harry Potter print. So again, those special collaboration print designs, colors, that kind of stuff randomly does really well. Harry Potter stuff has done well for me in the past. Disney, Harry Potter, those kind of fandoms are often popular and people are looking for them. I think this collab was like 4 years ago, so you're only going to find it on the resale market if you're looking for it. This sold for $90 in just 6 days. I paid $12 for it at Plato's Closet, and that made my net earnings $56.72. I couldn't believe how fast that sold. It was in perfect condition, and it was like a full-size backpack, but I think $90 is more than it retailed for 3 years ago. So you really just never know what you're gonna get for something. This is a piece that was from my own collection, so I did lose some money on it, but this was a Taylor Swift Eras Tour gray crew neck, or gray quarter zip sweatshirt. I got it at the Eras Tour, but I wanted a different size. They didn't have that size, so I kind of had the intention of selling it and then buying one in the size that I wanted. So I spent about $80 on it at the concert, sold it for $90, making my net profit $8, lose a little money on it, but I bought one in the size I wanted from Poshmark. It pretty much was an even switch, but anything Taylor Swift usually sells pretty well, especially the Eras Tour merch is still doing good, because I sold this in June, just 2 days after I listed it. I kind of forgot about it after I bought the one that I wanted in the right size, but yeah, worked out for me. We've got another Reformation piece. These I found at the bins. They were a pair of new with tag green trouser pants. They were a petite style, but I don't think that mattered. I watched someone throw them back. I have absolutely no idea why. There was nothing wrong with them. Brand new with tags. I paid $1.50 for them at the bins. They sold for $90 on eBay. Making my net earnings $75.80, and they took 69 days to sell, so a little longer, but for that profit, I am thrilled with it. Now we have a piece from my most recent time going to the Anthropologie outlet, and you're gonna see this brand a few more times, so make sure you remember it. The brand is Sachin Babi. This was the Rhineback mini dress in a white long sleeve, and it was a size 16, which I think probably helped me out with this sale. I bought it for $45. It sold for $90, making my earnings $27. Fine with that. This was a quick sale in just 23 days. Brought lots of attention to my closet, and I just love picking up this brand. It does so well for me every time. Next up is again from the Anthro outlet, but the other time I went, this is a new with tags Free People maxi dress. It was an off the shoulder, very boho print dress, really cute. This one sold for $95 on eBay, which I believe was my full asking price. I paid $35 for it, making my net earnings $46.76, which is great for a Free People dress, especially one that I paid up for. And it took 48 days to sell. I think this is the piece that was listed for the longest on here. This was a Johnny Was Tina wrap midi dress. It was new with tags, a holiday New Year's Eve type dress. Very much did not look like your typical Johnny Was, but it was plus size. I paid $35 for this. Was very excited to find Johnny Was at the thrift store. Probably didn't think enough about how it didn't look like the styles of Johnny Was that people like to buy. But it did sell for $100. I made $80 after Poshmark fees, making my profit, my net profit, $45. Here it says it was listed for 317 days, but I definitely relisted it at some point. I want to say it was closer to like that 2-year mark that it took to sell. So I am more conscious of Johnny Was pieces and generally just brand pieces that don't look like what that brand is known for. Such as I kind of lean now towards picking up Free People and Anthro pieces that are that very boho style or very current pieces from those brands if they aren't very boho. Like, I'm not picking up the business casual pieces or things that you'd say, oh, I had no idea that was from Free People. They just aren't doing as well for me, so I'm trying to be more conscious of that. Next up, we've got another Sachin Babi piece. This one was the Rosie dress, and it was definitely meant to be a bridal piece. It had a huge bow on the back. It was a mini dress with like a bow that was essentially floor length. Really fun style. I found this at the Crossroads in Midtown Manhattan. I paid $40 for it, but knew that it was gonna do well, and I just loved it. I love bows. So it sold for $100 on Poshmark, making my net earnings $40, exactly doubling my money. Great, love that. And it sold in just 19 days, so really cool. This was a fun piece. So this was from the brand Zegna. The first word of it is challenging to say. You've probably come across it before. It's like Ermenegildo Zegna. This piece actually just said Zegna on it. I think it's kind of a newer style from them. This was actually a baseball hat. It was made of merino wool. Found it at the bins, so it costs maybe $1. It sold for $100 the same day that I listed it. I think it retailed for like $400 or something crazy like that for a baseball hat. So my net earnings were $79, and that was definitely the best baseball hat I imagine that I'll ever come across. Maybe if you found like a Gucci or Louis Vuitton one, it would do better, but I was so thrilled with selling a baseball hat and making basically $80 for it. That is definitely a win. Next is a piece that was on my bucket list for a pretty long time, and I was really thrilled to finally find this brand. It is spelled Herve Leisure, but I looked up the pronunciation and it's pronounced Hervé Leger. So I found this at a Red, White, and Blue in Miami, and it sold in just one day of listing for $100. Maybe you could have gotten more for this. I took an offer on it because I was like, this is kind of a dated style, but suddenly bandage dresses are coming back again. So I don't know if I missed out on making a bit more on this, but I'm happy with selling something for $100 the next day. I paid $35 for it, making my net earnings $45. And I was just really thrilled to come across this brand. This was the first time I've ever seen it. Sometimes I find brands, especially in my area, that the thrift stores or buy-sell trade stores are just pricing up like crazy, but I'd never even come across this before, so I was really excited. More designer, we have a pair of Gucci pants. These were black mohair dress pants. They were like a skinny style. They had a little ankle slit, but I got these in a DIY designer box from ThredUp that I had ordered a while ago, and I kind of just put these in my to-list pile. Never got to them because I hate taking pictures of black pants, especially dress pants. And I was like, all right, I gotta list these. I'm so silly for just sitting on a pair of Gucci pants. So I paid about $20 for each piece in that box. These sold for $112, making my net earnings $66.32, and they only took 32 days to sell, which I thought was pretty great for a pair of skinny black pants. Even though they're Gucci, they definitely were not the most trendiest piece. More from that Anthro outlet. This is from the brand Cynthia and Sahar, which is known for bridesmaids dresses or dresses you would wear to a wedding. This one was an off-the-shoulder corset style, like burgundy gown. I paid $35 for this. It sold for $112.50. This is, I think, the only piece that sold in a bundle, but this sold in just 5 days, and that made my net earnings $55, and I was really excited that this sold so quick. I do like selling bridesmaids dresses, especially if I can find them new with tags, because it'll have like the style name and the color info on them, which I find really important for that type of dress in particular, because oftentimes a bridesmaid is looking for a certain style or color, and you have to make sure it's right. So when the tag says it right on it, that's the best, especially with like a color like blue, where there's 50 different blues from a brand. I try to avoid those because I don't want to list the wrong color and then get a return or have the bridesmaid be upset that it wasn't right or something like that. So just a tip. This was a surprising full price sale. So this was a Lilly Pulitzer dress. The style is a Sophie dress, which is a pretty popular style. They've made 100 prints in that style of dress. This one was the print Lily's House, which is kind of a popular print. It has a little bit of a following for it, and it came out a couple years ago, so people are obviously still looking for it. This sold for full price for $120. I did pay $40 for this at American Thrift, which is paying up more than you should for most Lilly pieces, but I knew that this print was popular, so I made $56 on this, so did more than double my money, but that was definitely risky, and I got really lucky that it sold for full price. But it did take 235 days to sell. This is from that first trip that I took to the Anthro outlet, and this is a Free People collab dress with the brand Orier, I think is how you say it. This was a really funky dress. It was called the Bubby dress, and it was like a denim tie-dye halter maxi dress. You would have to be a really fun person to pull this off. I definitely could not, but it sold for $120 on Poshmark. I did pay $60 for this, making my net earnings $36, which is not great. You definitely don't want to make back just half of what you paid for something. This store where I go for the Anthro outlet, mine in particular, does not have any cell service, so you're taking a little bit of a risk on pieces that you're picking up. I just thought this was fun and I would try it out, but if I could have been able to look it up, I probably would have left it behind. Then this piece I did, again, not make a ton of money on, but I knew that this was going to be a really quick sale, and it was my size, so I could have kept it if I wanted to. This was a Lilly Pulitzer Disney collab dress. It was the Minnie Mouse and Daisy Etta dress, and this was still for sale. It came out about a week before I found it at the thrift store, and I have no idea how it ended up at the thrift store that fast in New Jersey. Like, someone bought it and then immediately donated it. It had to have been a mistake or something, I don't know. But it sold for $120. I paid $60 for it because I knew that it was going to sell pretty much for full price very quickly. Making my net earnings just $32.72 on it, but it sold in 5 days, and I would have happily kept it if it didn't sell for making me a profit. But no regrets there. I was really excited to find it, and long story short, if you come across Lilly and Disney collab, definitely pick it up. It's incredibly popular. Any of the styles any piece you could find, it will do well. We've got another piece that I found in Florida, and this was from the brand Asha, which I had never heard of before, but it was a really gorgeous caftan dress, which is a style that I know is very popular and not one that I really find around me in New Jersey. So when I saw it in Florida, I wanted to give it a shot. It retailed for around $400, I believe. It was called the Lucia Maxi Dress, and it was in a really bright green color. It sold for $125. I paid $26 at Uptown Cheapskate, making my net earnings $74, and it only took 12 days to sell, which I was just really excited about it selling that quickly since it was a pretty unknown brand. I think it was kind of local to the Palm Beach area, which makes sense. But I love finding those unique pieces, and especially when they do well. We've got another Johnny Was piece, which is funny that there's that many on this list because it really is not a brand I come across as often as I would like to. This was the Isabella Bishop Sleeve kimono coat. It was gorgeous, incredibly embroidered. I think it was new with tags as well. I paid $66 for this at Crossroads in Manhattan, but it sold for $144 in just 5 days, making my net earnings $49.20. So I didn't double my money on it, but I was really excited to find such a gorgeous piece and that it sold quickly. And this piece came in right on the last day of the month, and this sold on eBay. This is a House of CB dress. It was the Reva satin style. It's like a very cocktail wedding guest kind of dress, but a little bit on the sexier side, which is common for this House of CB brand. It sold on eBay for $150, which was my full asking price, and she asked me if I could expedite the shipping on it. So I added like a 2-day service for her. So I paid $18 for this at a Plato's Closet in Boca Raton, Florida. And my net earnings were $116.66. So I was really excited that that sold for full price. I was not expecting that to sell on eBay, but that ended up being a great sale. It took 125 days to sell, which is probably the longest that I've ever held on to that brand for, but worth it for that full price sale. We've got more from Sachin Babi. This is the Sloan Asymmetrical Bow Taffeta dress. This was like a navy midi dress. It was from that Anthro outlet the most recent time I went. I paid $45 for this. It sold for full price for $180, making my net earnings $99, and it sold in just 4 days. I could not have been more excited for how fast it sold. It was such a pretty dress. I knew it would do well, but I wasn't expecting it to sell for full price that quickly. So, like I said, definitely be on the lookout for that brand. This was a full price sale as well, which was also surprising. This was for Love and Lemons, which is oftentimes kind of a hit and miss brand for me, but this was the Roslyn maxi dress, and it was like a pink and white lace. It had like a bunch of different tiers and mixed patterns and all of that. I picked it up for $20 at my local thrift, and it sold for $195 in just 30 days, making my net earnings $136. I think it was a very current piece, and it was new with tags as well. So I was really surprised with how well that one did. We have a piece that I found at a different estate sale than the one I mentioned earlier, and this is a Burberry trench coat. I believe it was a vintage style. It was kind of, it wasn't like the typical beige taupe color. It was a little more green, but it was a extra large long, which was interesting. I don't know if it was men's or women's. It doesn't say on it, but I picked this up for just $25. It sold for a full price of $200, making my net profit $135. It did take 225 days to sell, but for that earnings, that is a-okay with me. We are on to our last three here. Thanks for sticking with me. This is another Sachin Babi piece. This was the Blaine Taffeta square neck midi dress in a blue and white floral. I found this at a clothes mentor in North Carolina. This was, I think, the first time that I came across this brand, and this was such a pretty dress. I would have loved to have been able to wear this. I paid $70 for it, but it sold for $200 full price. My earnings were $90 after all the fees, and it took 95 days to sell, but really great brand, great price there. Then this one was another full price sale. Majority of my sales are not full price. I send out a lot of offers. I accept a lot of offers, especially on pieces I find from the bins. This was a Marchesa Notte red lace evening gown. It was sleeveless. It had like illusion parts on it, with like nude mesh. It was a stunning dress that I found at my local thrift store for just $12. It sold for $250, making my net earnings $188. And that took 334 days to sell. I'm not shocked by that. It was a bright red lace dress. That's kind of a bit of a niche piece to need, but it was really pretty and obviously a great profit. And then the last piece that I had is actually something that I sent to The RealReal. I do send things there, but majority of the time I'm making like $10 off of them. It's usually designer pieces that I send in that are styles that are just going to be really hard for me to list. I send a lot of pants that I find there, pieces that have no size and I don't know how to size them, or just pieces that I am slightly unsure if they're authentic or not, and they'll do the authentication, and that's on them if they mess it up and not me. Whereas if on Poshmark or eBay, like I found a Chanel bathing suit that I sent in that I honestly thought wasn't necessarily authentic, but they accepted it and listed it for $700. It hasn't sold yet, but those kind of things, I just would rather the liability be on them and not me. And that's usually what I send there. But this was a piece that I think I had listed on Poshmark for a while. It didn't sell, so I tried sending it in. And that was a Loro Piana men's parka jacket in like a camo print. Now, Loro Piana is an amazing brand. It's known for like wool. So this wasn't wool at all, which may be why it wasn't selling on Poshmark. But they originally listed it for $845. It sold for $295.75, which was them discounting it, obviously. Along the way, I only paid $12 for this at my local thrift store. So my earnings from The RealReal were $162.66. After their fees, they do take a hefty fee, but my net earnings were $150.66. I was thrilled with that because it just wasn't selling for me on Poshmark, and it was listed on there for 220 days, so a long time, but that is one of the higher profits that I've made from things that sold on The RealReal. So I just wanted to mention that one, even though it's a little bit less of a traditional selling platform. So that is my best 60 sales from this last half of the year. I'm looking forward to what is going to sell for me in this second half of 2025. Stay tuned for another one of these videos coming up at the end of the year. And I do share stuff that sells in my haul videos. Sometimes I do shipping videos. So if you want to see what's selling for me before December, you can check out my other videos. And thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.